Hello and welcome to Red Pill Rundown. A good friend of mine gave me a book last year, a piece of fiction which was a nice change of pace compared to my norm of controversial nonfiction books. This book is called The Name of the Wind, and overall was an enjoyable read and a well-written book. Want a quick summary of the 600-plus page story and don't care about spoilers? No worries, because here's your quick rundown on The Name of the Wind. The story begins with an innkeeper named Kote and his disciple Bast who are managing the bar with a few locals in, and there is talk of demons about. At some point, Kote goes out and finds someone in trouble, saving his life and fighting off some demon-like spiders. Back at the inn, Kote finds out this person is a famous scribe called the Chronicler, known for tracking down myths and writing down the truth as he discovers it. It turns out that Kote is actually a famous legend of a man named Kvothe. After some back and forth, Kvothe agrees to share his life story for it to be written down into history. We started his childhood in a traveling troupe called the Edema Rue, not unlike gypsies, though in this case they are known for red hair. Kvothe is much like the protagonist of a shonen anime, being extremely talented but also naive and inexperienced. Due to the nature of his parents' work, he is well versed in many plays, songs, and instruments, as they are a traveling circus of sorts. Kvothe is happy and content, surrounded by those he loves. Along their journeys, they run across an arcanist or mage called Abinthy, or Ben for short, who can call wind out of nowhere, and begins teaching Kvothe everything from philosophy and mathematics to chemistry and sympathy. Sympathy is essentially a scientific-ish magic that requires knowledge of the elements as well as a strong mental fortitude, though this does not include the aforementioned naming of things such as the wind. It reminds me a little of Doublethink in 1984, but in a different direction. An example would be that you could hold a candle wick in your hand, mentally connect it to the wick in a real candle on the other side of a room, take heat out of your body, and transfer it into the candle via the wick in your hand, lighting the candle. Sorta like voodoo magic. Anyway, Kvothe has a near-perfect memory which allows him to pick things up quickly, and so he learns a lot in a variety of subjects from Ben, though once he almost dies from using sympathy to suck out the air from his lungs, to which Ben has to save him and then hold back a bit on the sympathy training from then on. Still, Ben encourages Kvothe to go to the university where he could become an arcanist just like him. Time goes by, and once when the group stops to rest, tragedy strikes. A mysterious attack occurs while Kvothe was out in the woods, and he finds his entire family and troop brutally murdered, with an odd blue fire among the wreckage, with some mysterious characters present as well. The young Kvothe ends up spending years in the not nice part of town in a big city nearby, barely surviving, all while mentally blocking the death of his parents and troop. Eventually, around 15 years old, he gets some clues about the mysterious beings who killed his parents, and he regains his mental composure and travels to the university. During this travel, he runs across a QT named Denna that he very much likes but is too inexperienced to really pursue anything. He becomes a student, and at this point the book really feels like a shonen anime, with school hijinks, more magic, rivals, good teachers, bad teachers, and a plethora of small adventures. If you like that sort of thing, you should read this book, as this section takes up a very large part of the tale. He ends up finding the girl again, now a more refined woman and musically gifted like himself, and young Kvothe is clearly in love but still lacks the experience to romantically pursue in a meaningful sense. I do feel the need to note here that from my observation, Kvothe is a bit of a cuckold. Let me read this particular passage from page 651. "I have known her longer," my smile said. "True, you have been inside the circle of her arms, tasted her mouth, felt the warmth of her, and that is something I never had. But there is a part of her that is only for me. You cannot touch it, no matter how hard you might try. And after she has left you, I will still be here, making her laugh, my light shining in her. I will still be here long after she has forgotten your name." Anyways, Kvothe learns of an attack on a wedding 70 miles to the north with rumors of blue fire. This picks up his curiosity and he rushes over on a horse to find clues about those who killed his parents, only to find Denna as the sole survivor of the event, everyone else at the wedding being brutally murdered with an odd blue fire among the wreckage. Denna and Kvothe search around for clues, and while they find clues that link both massacres, they eventually find a dragon, essentially. It's a lizard that is extremely overgrown with scales hard as armor and has the ability to breathe fire. It eats trees and instinctively puts out its own fires, liking to sleep on hot coals. After more exploring and a bit of romantic shenanigans, they find a hidden area with a lot of trees that grow a very strong drug, which Kvothe had seen addicts of back in his time in the big city. The bad news is the dragon has been eating the trees and is more addicted to drugs than the average coffee drinker. The monster is freaking out as it's running out of trees to eat, the drug growers killed by the beast previously, and is experiencing withdrawal symptoms. Kvothe decides he needs to kill the beast, as otherwise it will end up rampaging in the next town and setting it all on fire. He collects a lot of the drugs and attempts to kill it by overdose, but the tolerance is too strong and the dragon ends up rampaging in the next town and sets it all on fire. He ends up killing it in a way that was as desperate as it was clever. In another event, he becomes so angered by an enemy from his university that he calls the name of the wind, calling a harsh, destructive wind down in an uncontrolled fashion. He then begins training with the master of naming at the university, who himself is very unhinged. We then go back to the present day where the innkeeper, Kote, has decided that's enough storytelling for today, and to top it off, a demon-possessed man intrudes on the bar, causing havoc, and Kote is found to be unable to use sympathy on it. The demon is slain, things start to calm down, and then Kote's apprentice, Bast, that I mentioned near the beginning, tells the truth. He is not human, but a supernatural being, and it was not chance that the scribe heard rumors of Kvothe at this town. Bast reveals he has essentially summoned the chronicler to get Kote to speak of his adventures, focusing on the good times and heroism, in an attempt to get him to become Kvothe again. It's not entirely explained, but the longer Kvothe goes on in life as Kote the bartender and innkeeper, the more he assumes that role and loses his abilities, such as sympathy. Bast wants Kote to remember who he really is. The book ends with an epilogue that mirrors the prologue in a neat way. And that's your quick rundown. Links in the description. See you guys later.